Hello and welcome to Red Read. Today I have yet another edition in the top 5 book and art combination videos, and for anyone who hasn't seen these before, I've done 2 of these videos already, but the general idea is that yes, on this channel I mostly talk about books, however I like listening to music, watching movies, and looking at paintings, and sometimes I find that there are certain synergies or connections between works of art across different mediums that I feel like, even though it's not straight adaptations, in these videos I'm never going to say something as obvious as like, if you liked the film Arrival, you should read Ted Chiang's short story, because that's just a literal adaptation. For this, I'm trying to look for or trying to find connections or just things that they kind of, it's like when I imagine the hypothetical aesthetic experience that I have, and that hopefully you are also having, I just feel like knowing about both of these works of art together kind of becomes greater than just the sum of their parts. And so yeah, basically the premise is I say a book, and then I say a book, or I say an author, like a general vibe, and then I just give a music, film, just any sort of other art combination that I think if you enjoy that, you'll also enjoy this. Again, it's not a one-to-one comparison. It's just trying to imagine that the sort of person who likes A is also going to like B. So let's get started. I have a couple of music recommendations today, which will be cool. And let's get started. You know what? Let's start with the thumbnail. If you like the writings of Thomas Pynchon, then I am going to recommend you listen to MF Doom. Specifically, I'm going to recommend 2 albums, Mad Villainy, where he's under the moniker of Mad Villain because he's collabing with producer Madlib, but then also Food, which is just a total Doom brainchild. He worked on it, wrote and produced it all himself. Why am I recommending MF Doom? So I think that this is probably a more obvious one for people who already know both of them. So famously, both Doom and Pynchon are pretty enigmatic characters. Of course, there's only a couple of known photos of Pynchon, and Doom also, for a person who was in an industry, he's unfortunately passed away, but was in an industry that is very like getting up and performing and like being, look at me. He really committed to focusing about the beats and focusing about the rhymes, and he is such a beautifully lyrical, kind of literate writer that it is insane. And I have a couple of examples that I really want to read. The kind of combination that I also get is especially when you read something like Pynchon's Mason and Dixon, it can kind of be, you feel like you're kind of in the presence of the most, the smartest boy ever, because there are times, and in Gravity's Rainbow as well, just thinking about how Pynchon can be writing this really just crazy dense work of art, and then throw in boy jokes and puns, talking about how after Slothrop has sex and he's after he orgasms, he has a soft off instead of a hard on, and also when Slothrop jumps out of a window and lands in a tree and he screams "tree at last," just those kind of and it feels almost like a running gag in a lot of Pynchon novels where a character falls down a staircase and then or falls down some stairs, lands on the floor, and then pulls out a cigarette and lights it before standing up. And there's something just about that, and really especially when you're reading Mason and Dixon and you're just simultaneously your jaw is dropped because of how technically virtuosic he is. Pynchon has so committed to writing in the style for Mason and Dixon, but then you also just have these hilarious jokes that you can kind of giggle and chuckle at. A similar thing with MF Doom, where sometimes he can be saying something he can be speaking in such a way or rhyming in such a way that you are just oh my god, I can't believe that he's not only rhymed, obviously, every single word at the end, but the rhyming scheme for every single line is matching perfectly, and he has internal lines that are being, or internal rhymes that are being called back to. And so I have two examples, but sorry, real quick, before that, like, of course, there's all this virtuosity, but then you will just have these skits, and he's using like a lot of comic references. You know, just the amount of references that show up in Doom remind me of the sort of references that show up in Pynchon's LA novels, like Vineland or Inherent Vice. I think that these are really of a piece, and I want to just read. Actually, I'm going to read two of them because they're both so good. So this is from Figaro, which is on the album Mad Villainy. And I'm going to try and not screw this up, but there's a couple of, there's some biblical references in here. There's reference to Moby Dick, but just like, and I'm also going to put the text up on the screen, but just like look at it and think about it, and of course, you know, actually go to listen to him singing it, because the way that he delivers it is so much. The rest is empty with no brain, but the clever nerd, the best MC with no chain you ever heard. Take it from the Tech 9 holder, dead bent, but don't know their neck shine from Shinola. Everything that glitters ain't fish scale. Let me think, don't let her faint get Ishmael. A shot of Jack got her back, it's not an act stack. Forget about the clack-a-lack, holler back, clack-clack blocker. Villainy, feel him in your heart chakra, chart topper. Start shit, stopper, be a smart shopper. Shot a cop day around the way, bout to stay. But who to know, there's two mo that wonder where the shooter go. Bout to jet, get him, not a bet, dead him. Let him spit venom, set him, got a lot of shit with him. Man, it's a goddamn tongue twister just trying to say these Doom lines. And then, of course, I'm going to also reference Beef Rap, which is hilarious. It's the first song of Food, where all of the songs are named after like food, because he just thought, you know, like, I'm not going to, you know, talk about the more typical themes in rap of just like, you know, popularity and like getting out of the hood and enjoying the lush life. But the really brilliant thing with this is it's beef rap. So he's talking about the food, beef rap, but he could also be talking about diss tracks. And the great thing is that you can essentially jump back between contextualizing these lines as either talking about food and being a literal glutton, or being a glutton for just like dissing on other rappers. Beef rap could lead to getting teeth capped, or even a wreath for Mom Dukes on some grief crap. I suggest you change your diet. It can lead to high blood pressure if you fry it, or even a stroke, heart attack, heart disease. It ain't no starting back once the arteries start to squeeze. Take the easy way out, phony. Until then, they know they wouldn't be talking that baloney in a bullpen. So just some brilliant stuff there. Of course, like bullpen, bull being like beef, where, you know, but then also being in prison, and then it ain't no starting back once arteries start to squeeze. It could be like, you know, your arteries getting clogged, but then also you get choked if, you know, you like start some real grief with somebody. Just, man, and there's some, like, there's a line where you know, Doom rhymes the name of like this Icelandic volcano in it. It's just crazy. It's like really bonkers that I can't sing his praise enough. And unfortunately, he did pass away in 2020, just to like round the year off and make it as shit as it possibly could be. But yeah, I'm going to recommend that you go and you listen to at least Food and Mad Villainy from MF Doom. Next up, if you like the works of Samuel Beckett, then I have a maybe slightly more unknown or underground reference for you. One of the things that's so cool about Beckett is that he writes music, and you know, I've made videos on all of Beckett's trilogy, And actually, before I talk about the example, there was a video that I watched recently, I think from the channel Casey is Reading, where she talked about how she had to read the Beckett trilogy for her studies, and she had a hard time at initially reading Malloy and Malone Dies, but then by the time she got to the Unnameable, because she'd learned the language of Beckett and the way that he writes, she found that the Unnameable was a really moving experience for her. And I thought that was like, firstly, that's a great way of describing it. Like, you talk about learning the language of the author, and once you commit to just being like, oh yeah, I'm just going to sink down, let it happen, and I'm going to meet Beckett on his own terms and then just see where the experience goes, I started thinking about what is some music that's like that. And there's a lot of the sort of music that's it can be repetitive, and I was thinking maybe like Philip Glass or some Steve Reich, but I ended up settling on a band called Dawn of Midi, and specifically their album Dysnomia. And I feel like I've known about this for a while, at least since I was in uni, but the really brilliant thing about this is that it is a lot like Samuel Beckett in that, or a lot like just a lot of the meditative stuff where there's nothing going on. It's a jazz trio, but they're performing very intricate, polyrhythmic and polymetric, probably more polymetric, rhythmically kind of dense music, and it just slowly evolves over time. And so I'm actually going to debut some guitar skills on the channel for the first time, just to kind of demonstrate what's going on with Dawn of Midi's album Dysnomia. And it's really cool because we start off with this odd bass pattern that you can't really tell where a downbeat is. It sounds like it's in an odd meter. It sounds like this. Where's the downbeat? 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. You're like, okay, we've got something going on in 7, and then 5 or 10. And you're just kind of waiting in this, like, odd meter zone for a while. And then slowly, piano comes in. With a pulse. And the bass line hasn't changed at all. But suddenly you have an anchor or a context. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And the really cool thing is you can't unhear it. And you'll always bob along to it. And I think that is just the perfect way of, if I said to someone, I need you to explain in 1 minute what the experience of reading Samuel Beckett is like, I would just play the start of that album, and then as soon as you sink into the groove, and of course, like, there's the whole rest of the album, that's like the first minute, and it just slowly develops over time. But I think that's such a great way of just saying, like, once you get it, you can't unget it. You can't unlearn what it's like to read Beckett, what it's like to learn his language. And so if you are willing to go into a work of art where you're not, immediately going to be like, I'm going to get a clear melody, or I'm going to get changes that are happening at a really rapid rate, if you're happy to just sink in and let a slow but gradual work occur over time, I highly recommend you listen to Dawn of Midi's Dysnomia, because I think it might remind you a lot of what reading Samuel Beckett is like. Next up, I have an art recommendation for you. This is a recommendation if you happen to like the works of Ryunosuke Akutagawa. And the recommendation is a Chinese painting or calligraphy artist, Guanxiu. who made the 16 Arhats, and this is a really kind of eerie collection of paintings that were done, and they are based on, so the Arhats or the Luohans are these kind of almost like saints, I suppose, in Buddhism. In the original Indian texts there were 4 Arhats, but then slowly over time there was like 10, and then there was 16, and I believe there was 16 at the time of Guanxiu, but then I think now canonically there's 18 Arhats, and they are sort of like people who have reached nirvana and followed the Noble Eightfold Path. So I suppose, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there's probably just a similarity between just like saints and the disciples of Jesus. And the reason why I'm recommending looking at these paintings, if you like the art of, or the work of Ryunosuke Akutagawa, is that there's something grotesque and seductive about them. And I was tempted, I thought, I wonder if it would be a better comparison to talk about Osamu Dazai's No Longer Human, which is a probably more popular work, but there's something about, I feel like with Dazai, his vibe is a lot closer to like what Junji Ito does in, and which is why I think that Junji Ito No Longer Human manga is like a match made in heaven. There's something a lot more charismatic and kind of seductive about the mental illness that Akutagawa had, and kind of almost knew that it was seductive to be suffering so much, but then also was genuinely suffering so much. I feel like there's something similar going on with these paintings of the Arhats, who are kind of shown, like obviously they're sacred, noble figures, but they're shown in this really grotesque and just kind of like quite dark, and it's such a unique art scheme that I've really not seen anything similar from this time period. So I think that those two are a really great combination. If you like the works of Ryunosuke Akutagawa, then just spend a couple of minutes taking a look at the 16 Arhats by Guanxiu. Okay, next up, so I have a movie recommendation for you, and maybe this is going to be the one where my book recommendation is going to be the least perfect, but I am totally open for recommendations of books that you think more closely fit into or have a closer parallel to this. I'm going to recommend that if you like the short stories of Clarice Lispector, specifically the earlier short stories where she's focusing a lot more on relationships and relationship dynamics in kind of small enclosed environments and small enclosed time frames, then I'm going to recommend one of the most beautiful films that I've ever seen. This is In the Mood for Love by Wong Kar-Wai. It stars Tony Leung and Maggie Cheung, and the premise of it, it's such a book premise as well, and it's just like, wow. Basically what happens is we have two families. We have, the family of Tony Leung, and then, or the couple, Tony Leung and his wife, and then Maggie Cheung and her husband. They move into an apartment together, and then they slowly start to realize that each of their partners is having an affair, and so Tony Leung and Maggie Cheung are the kind of leftovers, and they develop this weird pseudo relationship where they're obviously kind of processing the trauma of having an affair, but they also don't want to have an affair, so they start to enact these weird mock rituals and relationships that get you, that it almost seems like that it starts to question what being in a relationship ought to be, just in general. But the way that the movie is paced, and just like, obviously I don't want to like really spoil anything. There's not really that much to spoil, because it is like, in a Wong Kar-Wai style, it is a pretty slow, almost like a kind of, not like a bubbling drama, but just like it just slowly develops and then it just ends. And I really love that style of writing. And when I read kind of early Clarice Lispector short stories, where she's able to just really hone in and talk about like the dynamics and the relationship of, especially women in a relationship and the way that they respond to different types or different characters of men. I just think that it's almost, again, it's maybe not the perfect analogy, and if you've read a lot of really great drama or drama romance novels, then I would really love if you could kind of comment some recommendations of what you think is a bit more similar to In the Mood for Love. But yeah, just this idea of like a movie, a romance drama about an affair that is going on from the two people who are left over from the affair. And there's a great nod to it, a nod to the cinematography that shows up in Everything Everywhere All at Once. But yeah, In the Mood for Love, I really recommend it. And I haven't really seen any other Wong Kar-Wai films except for Chungking Express, which again, that is just such a movie, that is such a like bookly written movie. Like the first 40 minutes are about other random characters, and the main character doesn't show up until like 40 minutes into the film. But that's a cool film because it's like this man chasing this tormented young lover who's being left by his partner, and then he's kind of chasing this archetype or this ideal of a woman, and then we cut to this like second set of characters, and it's like just that juxtaposition is brilliant. And if you've seen any other Wong Kar-Wai films that you recommend I check out, please let me know, because I do really, really love this director, and I feel like even though I wholeheartedly adore Chungking Express and In the Mood for Love, I feel like I'm still really sleeping on Wong Kar-Wai as a creator, but I recommend it. It's probably one of my favorite films, In the Mood for Love. The Chinese name is Flowery Years, but yes, please go and watch it. It's just a brilliant film. Okay, lucky last, and we are slightly spicing up the formula because we don't want things to go stale. This is the third video series that I have, the third video in this series that I have done, and so for the end I actually have 2 recommendations. We're making it a little bit of a trinity. If you like spiritual, transcendental poets, I'm thinking of people like Rumi, but then also Walt Whitman or Rainer Maria Rilke, then I have 2 Armenian wonders for you. The first is a film called The Color of Pomegranates, which is by the director Sergei Parajanov, and it was originally entitled Sayat-nova, and it is the craziest film that I've ever seen, because Sayat-nova was an Armenian kind of poet, troubadour is probably the closest word. I think the Armenian word is ashug, and the idea for the film is that Parajanov wanted to convey or reveal the poet's life, quote, visually and poetically rather than literally. So there's very little dialogue, but you will have scenes where things are just floating around in space, and you'll see ways that an incredibly sensitive poet musician is just learning about the world, learning about sexuality, and there are some scenes where at the same time or around the same time that the poet sees a breast for, like in the wild, I suppose, as a young boy, he also sees naked men getting bathed. And over the course of the film, 4 different actors and actresses portray Sayat-nova, the main character, and like 2 of them are women and 2 of them are men, and there's this really kind of stunning androgynous character going on where you don't know, and like one of the characters who plays young Sayat-nova also plays his like muse or mistress, and it's crazy. It is like one of the most like easily the most aesthetically stunning or out of the ballpark films that I have ever seen. There's also a scene where like 100 sheep are on camera, and I'm just like, who figured out how to do this? Is there like a Emmy or something that you can win for Best Shepherd on a film? Because whoever was the animal wrangler on this set deserves a medal. Like, it is incredible. And like, I can't spoil things. I just really need to recommend that like the film is on YouTube. Go and watch it. It is insane, like insanely good. And it's like a distributed by Janus Films, who I think also did some of Tarkovsky, so it's going to be sort of a piece with that. However, going to a more modern Armenian legend or genius, I'm going to recommend the music of Tigran Hamasyan. And Tigran Hamasyan is incredible. I've known about Hamasyan for years. I've learned a couple of his pieces, and I like seeing him perform at the Opera House was just a mind-blowing experience, especially because he was performing music from this album that I'm going to recommend, which is An Ancient Observer. In this album, he seems to worm in and use Armenian folk melodies. It's a solo piano album. Sometimes he sings, but he doesn't really often sing with lyrics. He just kind of whistles or chants, and there's a similar virtuosity leading to transcendence that I've talked about, with James Joyce and Ben Jonson's string quartets. But in terms of having an artist that can really genuinely generate labyrinths and fractals in real time and is currently alive today and has an Instagram account where he posts shitpost videos of him beatboxing in odd time signatures, and then when you go and listen to something like The Cave of Rebirth, which was a piece that was so influential to me that I would listen to it every day, for a few months. And then, go and check out, he has, I think the first song in the album is Marcos and Marcos, which is based on a poem that an Armenian writer, I'm sorry, I can't remember the name of this Armenian poet, but I almost wanted this to be kind of an Armenian trilogy. I was really looking around to try and find an Armenian book or an Armenian poetry collection, but I figured to hopefully try and introduce these things into an audience. I wanted to go for a little bit more of a safer option of Rumi and just general spiritual. Sorry, I stopped. I just saw someone nearly get run over. But yeah, I wanted to go for someone like Rumi because just that general spiritual transcendentalism, it's crazy that a artifact like the color of pomegranates exists, but then it's also just insane that we are living in a time when someone this spiritually and transcendentally rich is still alive, still making music. So please go and check out the music of Tigran Hamasyan. And yeah, those are all my 5+1 art recommendations for if you like certain books or certain styles. I hope you enjoyed, and yeah, like I said, as always, give me recommendations in the comments because I want to go and learn more and have more recommendations for more videos. But yeah, I think that these are the ones, these 5 are really just the stuff that I really personally like and the stuff that I'm looking at and listening to every single day. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed. If you're the sort of person who likes these sorts of works of art, of course, let me know. You can either send me a comment or send me an email just giving me some more recommendations for other works of art. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.